All right, today we're breaking down a source that analyzes the escalating crisis on the Nile River. It's all centered on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and what this particular report describes as its devastating impact on the countries downstream. And just a heads up, we're really digging into one specific viewpoint on what is, of course, a highly complex issue.
Okay, let's jump right in with a number that just stops you in your tracks. 750 million. According to our source, that's how many cubic meters of water are pouring out of the Renaissance Dam every single day. Now, the report really emphasizes this isn't just a trickle. We're talking about a torrent, an unprecedented release that it argues has completely upended the situation for Egypt and Sudan.
So, who's bearing the immediate brunt of this? Well, according to this analysis, the first nation right in the path of this torrent was Sudan. This massive, sudden release of water is presented as the direct trigger for an immediate and absolutely devastating crisis.
According to the source, we're talking about a nightmare scenario unfolding in real time. States of emergency have been declared all the way from Khartoum to Sinnar. You have communities along the Blue Nile literally scrambling, grabbing whatever they can, their belongings, their livestock, and just desperately trying to find higher ground as the water rises around them.
And just look at these levels. The river has shot up to 16.99 meters. To put that into perspective for you, that is the second highest level ever recorded. It's a chilling reminder of the catastrophic floods back in 2020 that put half the country underwater and displaced 500,000 people.
So, what's causing this? Is it just unusually heavy rains? Some kind of natural cycle? Well, according to the source material we're looking at, the answer is a big no. It points the finger directly at what it calls a series of critical failures at the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam itself.
The report lays out what it describes as a cascade of failures. It's a laundry list of alleged problems, inoperable turbines, serious engineering flaws, and a crisis that it claims was triggered by the reckless opening of floodgates, all due to mismanagement. And the source stresses this was all done without any coordination with Egypt or Sudan.
And here's where the source makes a really heavy accusation. It claims that Ethiopia dipped into its emergency water reserves for no logical reason. It basically turned a safety measure into a weapon, dramatically increasing the risk downstream. The source calls it a reckless act, pure and simple, with devastating consequences.
So, this crisis is flowing from one river, but the source says it's creating two totally different fates for the nations that depend on it. Let's look at how this is playing out for Sudan versus how it's affecting Egypt.
And this slide really lays it all out. For Sudan, the crisis is right now, an existential threat of too much water that could wipe entire communities off the map. But for Egypt, the source argues the threat is the exact opposite. It's the terrifying long-term prospect of too little water, a severe drought, especially with years of low rainfall projected to be on the horizon.
You might be wondering, why isn't Egypt flooding right now too? Well, the source explains that the answer is its own colossal dam, the High Aswan Dam. Its massive reservoir, Lake Nasser, is acting like a giant shield, soaking up this unprecedented surge and protecting Egypt from an immediate disaster. But, and this is a huge but, that shield can't protect it from a future drought. To really get to the heart of this conflict, the source says you have to look past the concrete and steel. The argument here isn't just about engineering, it's about the entire philosophy behind each of these massive projects.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. Look at how the source frames this comparison. On one hand, you have Egypt's High Aswan Dam, portrayed here as a symbol of national liberation, built for its own development in a way that it claims didn't harm its neighbors. On the other hand, it frames the Renaissance Dam as a tool for political pressure, built by taking advantage of regional chaos and designed to create facts on the ground while stalling any real negotiations.
And all of this builds up to a core concept presented in the source, something you could call the state of the dam theory. Basically, the idea is that a dam itself is just a structure. It's the character and the intentions of the state that builds it that ultimately decides its purpose, whether it becomes a tool for shared prosperity or a weapon of conflict.
So, where does all of this leave us? Well, right here, in this incredibly tense moment. With floodgates open and diplomatic channels seemingly frozen, the source paints a picture of a region balanced on a knife's edge, just waiting to see what happens next.
So, what's the bottom line from this source? The conclusion is pretty stark. What Sudan is going through right now isn't a natural disaster. It's being presented as a real-life nightmare, a humanitarian catastrophe caused directly by what the source calls mismanagement and poor intentions from upstream.
And that's the final haunting question this source leaves us with. What started as a national dream for Ethiopia, according to this analysis, now poses a critical threat to its neighbors. And how this question gets answered will likely determine the fate of millions of people who depend on the Nile for their very survival.